3 sinister true stories from Craigslist revealed nightmares of the cursed and haunted. Sarah could feel the chill creep down her spine as she read the words on her computer screen. 3 sinister true stories from Craigslist revealed nightmares of the cursed and haunted. Her heart hammered. She was just a single mom searching for a fresh start, desperate to escape the emotional wreckage of her recent divorce. But when she stumbled onto a Craigslist ad for a 3-bedroom house at a price that seemed too good to be true, the thrill of hope jostled with the fear that maybe she was diving headfirst into something dark. First, the neighborhood looked like a postcard, a quiet suburb filled with cheerful families. But as she drove down the street, a sense of wrongness twisted the air. The smiles from neighbors felt strained, warm on the surface but chilly underneath. At her first social gathering, awkward laughter echoed around her, but she couldn't shake the feeling they were watching her, studying her like she was the newest doll in their twisted collection. Late that night, Sarah lay wide awake. Shadows danced on her walls, whispering her name like they were beckoning her to join their ranks. When she heard the muffled voices calling her from the darkness, panic surged like fire through her veins. "Jacob," she whispered to her son sleeping peacefully beside her, "everything is okay." But she knew it wasn't he. She tried rationalizing it, night bloomers playing tricks on her. But there were moments that gripped her with ice-cold fear. What was that clattering sound coming from the living room? The creak of the floor made her heart race as she peered into the empty space. Just her imagination, she told herself. But the shadows seemed to watch. When she was cleaning out the dusty basement, she felt a pulse of dread run through her. There was a warped door, with splintering on the edges, almost as if it was fighting to stay shut. Finally, she twisted the rusty doorknob, and it opened with a horrific creak. Inside lay remnants of the past, a child's toys, half-burnt candles, jars filled with strange objects, names written on them. One name stood out: Rachel, missing since 2009. Her breath caught in her throat. The air turned gritty. The neighbors' sickly sweet hospitality began twisting into something grotesque in her mind. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Anxious, she approached her welcoming neighbors. Instead of help, they ensnared her in odd questions like webs thrown over a struggling fly. Panic burbled beneath her surface, swirling through her thoughts, tainting every breath. When the lights flickered, illuminating the shadows around her, she caught a glimpse of something lurking beyond the corner of her yard. As dread washed over her, she fought to maintain her composure for Jacob's sake. But she could feel the walls closing in, hear whispers that demanded she join them in their dark embrace. When she finally dialed 911, minutes stretched like hours before she realized the phone line had been cut. The lights went out, smothering her in endless darkness. Then, through the gloom, she saw them, her neighbors standing at her door, illuminated by the last flicker of porch light, smiling with an unnerving calm, waiting. She was ready to fight, but Sarah understood one terrifying truth. She was trapped, and her new home was not what it seemed. A heavy silence settled over the house, pressing against Sarah like a load of bricks. The insatiable darkness seemed to expand, creeping closer as though it were a living, breathing entity, hungry for her fear. Jacob let out a soft whimper in his sleep, stirring just enough to bring her attention back to him. She squeezed his hand tightly, her own heart pounding, desperate to keep him safe. The neighbors weren't just watching, they were waiting for her to make the next move. Sarah tiptoed backward, her feet careful not to make a sound against the cold wooden floor. The shadows formed grotesque shapes all around her, their corners alive with a sinister energy that whispered secrets she was too terrified to hear. She threw a glance toward the door, the peeling paint now seeming to mock her with every rough edge. Suddenly, a sound broke the stillness, an unsettling screech, like nails on a chalkboard, reverberated through the house. It came from the basement, from that warped door. Unearthly growls throbbed through her as she considered the remnants of Rachel's life that lay behind it. How could a mother ever let that happen? Stay here, Jacob, she whispered, her voice trembling. She hated the thought of leaving him alone, but curiosity clawed at her insides, urging her to discover the truth. With one last look at his peaceful face, she lightly stepped toward the hallway, each creak in the floor feeling like a warning to eye. In the middle of the hallway, the flickering light bulb overhead cast frantic shadows, making the walls twist and squirm. She paused as a fleeting image of her neighbors flooded her mind, their eyes, devoid of warmth, glimmering with something sinister. Were they involved? A knot twisted in her stomach as doubt mingled with fear. Crossing the threshold into the basement, she found herself swallowed by darkness. She fumbled for her phone in her pocket, using its dull glow to guide her. The basement was a tomb of memories, but the air held something more, something thick and suffocating. The smell of decay lingered beneath the dust and neglected corners. With each step down, she felt as though she were spiraling into a deeper abyss. Standing before the rotten door, she hesitated, her heart racing. What if she uncovered something she couldn't handle? But what if Jacob was in danger? Raw instinct propelled her to twist the doorknob once more, the metallic groan calling her to unveil the horrors within. The door swung ajar, revealing a space cluttered with a too familiar pattern, jars resembling the remnants she had seen earlier. Names scrawled on paper, each one a grave marker for innocent lives lost. Then her eyes landed on something else, a small, tattered teddy bear at her feet. It was stained and worn, but a name was stitched into the fabric. Rachel.as. She reached down to grab it. A feeling of dread washed over her. She turned, sensing movement. Her phone's light flickered, shadows coiling like snakes. In the pulse of a heartbeat, she felt a surge of energy at her back, a presence so heavy it wrapped around her like chains. Breathing fast, she spun to face the open doorway. Sarah, it was a voice, low and dark, slithering into her ear like smoke. A weight pressed against her chest, suffocating her. She fought back a scream, her instincts screaming for her to run back to Jacob. But as she turned, they were there. The neighbors stood in a menacing line, their smiles now razor-edged, eyes glowing with cruel delight. "You found her," one said, a twisted glee painted on their features. "That's just the beginning." Another smirked, stepping closer, their breath cold as a grave. Unable to breathe, Sarah stumbled backward, her mind racing. Their intentions sunk in too late. She was no longer an observer, she was part of their nightmarish game. In that instant, she realized the truth. The walls weren't just closing in. They were screaming for her to join them. The last glimmer of her phone flickered out as darkness embraced her, and she felt cold hands reach through the shadows, pulling her into a nightmare she couldn't escape. What had she truly awakened? And what was waiting for her in that suffocating dark? The sensation of hands gripping her wasn't the worst part. It was the knowledge of what those hands belonged to. As Sarah fell into the suffocating dark, her heart pounded, resonating in her ears like a frantic drum. She twisted, trying to flee, but the neighbors dotted around her like statues, immovable, predatory, their mouths curling into ghastly smiles that reveled in her horror. "Let her go?" A voice surged from behind her. "Jacob." Panic flared to life, igniting a flame in the pit of her stomach. "I won't let you hurt her." But the boy was far behind, lost in the shadowy world she could barely grasp. The cold grip on her escalated, squeezing. She gasped, stumbling deeper into the basement, where the familiar foul scent blended with something sweet and rotten. Every inch of the dark space reeked of despair and betrayal. She tried to pull away, but another hand darted out from the shadows, brushing against her cheek, icy, skeletal fingers that seemed to know her very flesh. "Stay with us," a discordant voice purred, vibrating around her like the hum of electricity. The neighbors closed in, their shadows creeping with a parasitic hunger. "You've awakened something. Something beyond comprehension." Her mind raced. The jars, the names, Rachel. What had they done? The truth lingered on the tip of her tongue, but fear choked her voice. A sudden scream pierced through the dark, shredding her thoughts. It was Jacob. The world around her exploded with urgency. The air turned thick and stifling, vibrating with the echo of her son's cries. They came from above, from the safe space where she had left him. "Jacob!" she shrieked, her voice slicing through the darkness like a weak candle flame in a raging storm. She lunged toward the door, the neighbors reaching out as they hissed words that twisted her resolve. You can't escape. You belong to us now. Fingers clawed at her sleeves, tearing fabric while she struggled, desperate to break free. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, propelling her forward. No, she bellowed, pushing through the thrumming mass, forcing her foot against the threshold. The basement door creaked ominously, its edges sharp and unforgiving. Just as she thought she had the power to escape, one of them grabbed her by the ankle, dragging her back into the churning darkness. The raw panic pulsed alive. No, not like Rachel. She wouldn't meet the same fate, trapped forever among lost whispers. With a surge of defiance, her foot shot back, connecting with something soft and yielding. The grip faltered, and in that heartbeat of hesitation, she shot through the doorway. She collided with the wooden stairs, scrambling desperately back to the hallway. But as she raced upward, a voice called softly from the basement. Almost a lullaby. You can't run from fate. No sooner had the words faded than the flickering light bulb above her shattered, plunging her into an abyss of confusion. She threw herself toward the living room, her own breath echoing like a terrified heartbeat. The neighbors' laughter trickled in from behind her, a haunting melody that promised suffering. Mommy, please help. Jacob cried again, fear piercing every syllable. Hold on. I'm coming. But desperation crashed the barrier of hope, twisting it into despair. The front door was locked impenetrable. She spun, her mind racing for a way out, every second stretching like a rubber band ready to snap. Then she heard it whispers fluttering through the walls, echoing the desperate pleas of lost souls. They were inside the house, surrounding her, ready to seal her fate. Join us, they urged, scratching at her mind's door. Sarah froze for a second, heart in her throat, and in a fleeting moment, she wondered if escape was even possible. Light burst from the kitchen, revealing a shadowy figure standing still, revealing a face she couldn't trust. Jacob? But as she reached forward, a chilling scream echoed down the hallway. In that instant, she realized their game was far from over. What truth lay ahead, twisting in the very fabric of their reality? And could she fight against whatever lay in? Wait for her in this horrifying dance. The air thickened, swirling with dread and echoing whispers that clawed at Sarah's sanity. The figure in the kitchen didn't step forward. Its back remained to her, shadowed and indistinct, but a twisted sense of familiarity crawled through her mind. Jacob, she cried again, panic slicing through her. Silence followed. Then, a muted thud, coming from the kitchen. That sound pierced through her like a knife. The whispers in the walls turned to laughter, twisted and hysterical. She staggered back, flipping her gaze desperately around. The living room felt like a trap closing in, taunting her with avenues of escape that vanished like smoke. Please, you have to be there. She whispered to the empty space, a chant against the rising tide of despair. Disoriented, she took a trembling step forward, her foot landing on something soft and sticky. Glancing down, fear clawed at her throat. It was a small pile of something dark and wet, something that could only belong to her son. Jacob. Without another thought, she dashed for the kitchen doorway, tearing through the shadow that enveloped the room. The figure spun around at the sound of her frantic footsteps, and in a heartbeat, she faced a gaping maw of shadows. Eyes, thousands of them, glinted back at her, dragging her gaze into a void filled with promises of agony. Join us, they hissed, a chilling harmony that dripped with malice. Racing backward, she realized she was not alone. Out of the corner of her eye, Jacob appeared, his small frame cloaked in darkness. His smile was stretched too wide, teeth gleaming unnaturally in the sparse light from the overhead fixture. Mommy, don't be scared, he cooed, but the sweetness turned sour in her stomach. This wasn't he, her boy, not truly. The laughter of their neighbors echoed outside, swirling with Jacob's voice, infusing the air with a sinister mockery. Stop, Jacob, don't listen to them. But his eyes narrowed, glinting with an unnatural sheen. They helped me, Mommy. They let me see what was happening. All the safety she'd taught him vanished into the shadows, encroaching further into the house. She could barely breathe. Each inhalation was a suffocating reminder of her failure to protect him. In a desperate bid for clarity, she launched herself toward the front door. Her nails clawed against the cold metal handle, twisting and jerking it futilely. With a primal scream, she turned back to Jacob. Jacob, Come with me. But he shook his head slowly, a puppet dancing on invisible strings. I don't want to leave, Mommy. I want to stay where? With them, she shouted, her voice breaking. The realization struck her like a bucket of icy water. Whatever had taken root in her neighbors had infected Jacob too. The shadows thickened. The whispers transformed into a chorus of laughter that threatened to drown her. Join us, escape the pain. She felt the cold fingers of fear clutching at her heart again, bubbling over with desperation. The walls vibrated in response, whispering secrets she never wanted to hear. Just as hope began to dim, she spotted a gleam of silver, an old kitchen knife. Clutching it tightly, she summoned all her courage. I want to let you take him. She turned to face the shadows once more, the knife gleaming like a beacon of resilience. But her resolve faltered as she faced the haunting dance of her neighbors, each of them reaching toward her with insatiable hunger, encouraging her to join. Mommy, please. Jacob's voice tugged at her heart. No, she screamed, shaking her head violently. Suddenly, a chill swept through the kitchen as the floorboards creaked ominously beneath her feet. The shadows seemed to tremble, and all at once, a surge of energy charged through the air, enveloping her. But then she felt the floor give way, and she stumbled back, losing her footing. Falling into darkness, she could only think of her son's scared, forlorn eyes. What lay beneath the surface? Would she find him waiting on the other side, or had the darkness claimed him, consuming his very essence? As her scream echoed in the void, the last remnants of her hope faded. A jolt of cold air enveloped Sarah as she tumbled through the void, panic turning her blood to ice. The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering into the darkness below, an echo swallowed by the overwhelming silence. She braced for impact, but hit nothing, just continued falling, spiraling downward into an endless night. Then, it stopped. Without warning, she landed softly on a cold, damp surface, the scent of mildew and despair saturating the atmosphere. A faint light flickered to life, revealing crumbling walls that swallowed her whole, cloaked in a fog so thick it felt like a living entity. Jacob? Her voice, a small thread of sound, barely traversed the gloom. Each breath she took tasted of fear, hot, metallic, stinging. Suddenly, a soft echo repeated her name. It was faint, distant yet so familiar. Mommy. Jacob. She rushed toward the sound, her heart pounding violently in her chest, desperation fueling her steps. As she moved, the dim light ebbed and flowed, revealing shifting shapes that darted just beyond her vision. Mommy. The voice was closer now, layered with an innocence she fought to believe in, but tinged with the sinister edge of deceit. Where are you? She cried, stumbling over unseen obstacles. 1,000 memories flooded her mind, his laughter, the feel of his tiny hand in hers, the afternoons in their sunlit yard. She fought to push through the oppressive air, struggling against the suffocating shadows. With newfound determination, she pressed on, each step peeling back the layers of darkness like thin, suffocating skin. She could not lose him, she had to find him. But the whispers returned, swirling around her like a storm of lost souls. Stay with us, he's safe, here. Shut up, she yelled, clenching her fists. You won't take him from me. The walls shuddered as if in response to her defiance. Shadows morphed into figures, indistinct but tangible, their faces warped with twisted expressions. They drifted closer, hands reaching, beckoning her to succumb. Join us, they hummed, voices mingling in a ghastly melody that resonated deep in her bones. No, she screamed, fear igniting her as she pressed onward. A distant glow pulsed like a heartbeat, intensifying with every movement, a drum urging her forward to hope, to despair, to the heart of whatever lay in wait. With every step, the shadows lunged after her, their laughter rising like a tide, desperate to pull her under. She reached the glowing light, and as she broke through, she found herself in a cavernous space, a reflection of her living room but corrupted, broken, and alive with the darkness that had overtaken it. Jacob, she called again, her voice starting to crack with exhaustion. And then, there he was. Not just a shadow, but her boy, the way she remembered, outstretched arms and wide, hopeful eyes. Mommy, he cried, voice unwavering, innocence pouring from his tiny frame. But in that moment, the shadows conformed, revealing deeper truths, shifting from familiar forms into grotesque caricatures of their neighbors. Wretched faces twisted into familiar smiles, eyes gleaming with malevolence. "Don't fight us, Sarah," they cooed, a chorus that sent shivers racing down her spine. "He belongs with us. You can join him in joy now." She felt the ground beneath her quaking with despair, but she forced her feet to move. "We're leaving." Mommy Jacob's voice wavered, mixing with the cacophony of the shadows that writhed around her. In her heart, a bitter knot twisted. Had her son already been claimed by the darkness? Would he join their embrace, or was there still a chance to save him? "Jacob, please," she called, tears blinding her vision, mixing with fear that bubbled up within. The dark figures whispered sweetly, pulling at the frail strings of her will, but the light pulsed. It beckoned to her with an urgent intensity. She reached for her son, the warmth in her gut igniting with fierce tenacity. As she stepped forward, the shadows lunged, fingers curling around her wrists, cold, clammy, pulling. "Join us forever, don't you want to be free? Let him go," she screamed, wrenching herself away from their grip as the light intensified, wrapping around her like a cloak, pushing against the darkness. With one final, desperate leap, she lunged toward Jacob. Their hands connected, warmth flooding between them, but the shadows screamed. They twisted, contorted, agonized cries reverberating through the air. "You cannot escape." They began pulling back fiercely, and as she was tugged from the light, a chilling thought struck her. What if it was too late? "Hold on, Jacob." The darkness closed in again, and for a moment, Sarah felt herself tugged between two worlds. But what lay behind her? Had Jacob already made his choice? Just as they spiraled dangerously close to the chaos, a blinding light surged forth from the depths below, illuminating the truth hidden in the shadows. What was happening to them? As a new voice emerged from the darkness. "Mommy, don't let go." The world around Sarah blurred, the luminescence of the light flickering in and out like a dying star. The grip of the shadows tightened, their cold fingers biting into her skin, dragging her toward the abyss. The face of her child shimmered before her, flickering in and out of existence like a mirage. Desperation clawed at her insides, a raw, primal urge to cling to the last remnants of hope. "Jacob." Her voice broke, echoing in the dark space that felt like an endless void, the walls breathing with a malignant rhythm. The shadows released a chorus of laughter, cruel and mocking. "You cannot fight what is already yours, Sarah. Join us, find the peace you crave." She could feel their breath cool and rancid, whispering secrets that tangled in her mind like thorny vines. What peace? Why would they offer a release that felt like chains? They were deceitful forms of her worst fears, twisting reality into a grotesque parody. Then she heard it again, that soft cry, "Mommy, don't let go," and every ounce of her resolve surged. She couldn't let darkness steal her Jacob. Not again. With a roar that echoed off the walls, she pulled against the grasp of the shadows and sprinted toward the light. Her heart thundered like a war drum, each step a fight, every ounce of energy a rebellion. "We're getting out of here, I promise," she yelled, lunging toward the beacon. The shadows writhed in agony, their faces contorting into rage and sorrow. They lunged at her, their form blurring, swirling like smoke, intent on dragging her back into despair. "You'll wish you had stayed," they cried, weaving images of despair, threats of abandonment, glimpses of what life would be without Jacob. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a familiar object, a toy car, a faded red with chipped paint. Jacob's favorite. It rolled under her foot, and in that split second, memories crashed over her like icy waves. The afternoons racing in the yard sunshine, laughter, everything that promised joy. The car spun, colliding with the lingering shadows, and the figures wailed. "You can't escape this world. It's all he knows now." A resolute fury ignited within her. "Not if I can help it." She clutched Jacob's tiny hand with a fierce grip, her energy crashing through the shadows. The pulsing light enveloped them, its warmth igniting a fire against the encroaching dark. But then came the whispers, seductive and chilling. "What if he is better off with us? What if peace, love lies here?" The walls echoed, shaking with spectral laughter. Sarah froze for a beat, doubt seeping into her determination like poison. What if it was true? What if this torment was all Jacob could anticipate? The shadows reached deeper into her mind, pulling pictures from her memory, the moments she could never capture again, the milestones lost in a dark sea of grief. "Mommy," Jacob whispered, his voice trembling, but still holding that hint of innocence. Was he afraid of the darkness? Or was he embracing it? In that instant, she felt his grip weaken, a sliver of doubt creeping into his heart. Panic clawed at her. "No. Please, Jacob, don't fall for their lies." The shadows swarmed, their voices crescendoing into an almost deafening climax, dragging her fears to the forefront. The realization struck hard. She wasn't just battling for herself, but for him too. "We can fight them," she screamed, leaning into the light, urging him to come back to her. "Follow me, Jacob. I'm right here." Tearing through the shadows, she felt their hold losing strength, but the cacophony of twisted figures rose to a fever pitch. The swirling horror reached out to claim them both, ravaging her thoughts with grotesque images of loss. "Together, Jacob. Remember the car, the yard. Focus on me," Sarah cried out, pouring every ounce of strength into her plea. As the shadows began to unravel their grip, a clawing fear took hold. What if she couldn't pull him back? What if she was already too late? Suddenly, the oppressive darkness surged again, wrapping around them like a vice. "Mommy, don't let go." But then, the ground beneath them shifted, cracking open with a violent tremor, revealing a deep chasm bathed in crimson. The haunting whispers beckoned, temptation strong, and the light flickered dangerously. Was this the path to freedom or destruction? The chasm's edge loomed closer, shadows reaching, pulling, twisting reality as fear shouldered out reason, inviting them to plunge into the unknown. Sarah's heart raced as she fought the coming tide. What awaited them on the other side? Would they meet the same fate as so many before them? Her grip tightened, but would it be enough? Just as the abyss threatened to trap them both, another voice broke through the chaos, echoing loudly in the gloom. Choose now. What choice could she make in such darkness? Could she really save Jacob, or would he vanish into the void forever? The abyss opened wide, a grotesque maw eager to swallow them whole. Sarah forced herself to hold on tighter, dancing on the edge of that crimson chasm, the air thick with the scent of decay and despair. "I want to let you go, Jacob. I want to." But the darkness was relentless. It pulsed and writhed like a living thing, scratching at the edges of her resolve. The closer they got to the precipice, the clearer the whispers became. "Embrace it, Sarah. Let him go, it's safer here." "No," she screamed, shaking her head as if to dislodge the horrid suggestion. The shadows hissed, growing agitated, their faces shifting into familiar ones, friends long lost, family members she buried. "They'll only hurt you more," they crooned, their voices silky and inviting. "You cannot protect him. Not here." Every heartbeat thundered in Sarah's chest, drowning out the darkness' seductive song. She could not turn back now, not with her child's soft cries haunting her ears, echoing through the vast expanse of shadow. "Mommy, I'm scared." Tears stung her eyes as she choked back sobs. Each tear that fell threatened to turn into a moment of weakness, something the shadows would seize upon. "You're stronger than this, Jacob. Trust me." With one final surge of will, she pulled him closer, nurturing the light they had fought so hard to preserve. But the creeping dread was ever present, clawing at her insides. What if all of this was futile? What if this struggle only brought more pain for Jacob? The whispers fanned those flames of fear, showing images of a shattered existence, lives lived without joy, each memory wrapped in the cold embrace of shadows. "Choose." The voice rang out again, insistent. "Choose the darkness or embrace the void. Which will it be? Freedom or pain?" In disarray, Sarah staggered backward, the ground trembling beneath her. The shadows shrieked with rage, lashing out like wild beasts. Just then, the air shifted. A sudden burst of brightness illuminated the chasm's depth, an incandescent doorway inviting them to a vision. Within the light, Sarah glimpsed scenes of joy, Jacob laughing, running through the sun-drenched park, his little hands sticky with ice cream. She saw the moment he first rode a bike, his beam of triumph radiant. They were memories she thought lost, moments stolen away by darkness. "Mommy," Jacob sobbed. "It's too scary. I want to go home." Sarah faltered. Would going home mean surrendering to the darkness? And yet, with every heartbeat, the caverns of despair tried to pull them apart. The shadows writhed again, their anger palpable, but she couldn't let Jacob break. Not now. Not ever. Jacob, Sarah shouted, desperation fueling her voice. Listen to me. We must fight. The love is stronger than the dark. Focus on us. For a moment, silence fell among the shadows. She seized the opportunity to push forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Together, sweetheart. Just like we practiced conquer what's inside. Close your eyes, hold my hand, and let us jump into the light. I'll catch you. Jacob hesitated. The flickering hesitance in his eyes told her all she needed to know. The choice weighed heavily on him, but the urgency crackled in the air around them. The shadows began to close in, fueled by the mounting fear. Mommy, his voice quaked, uncertainty painted across his face. Now, Jacob. Now. With one last, strained breath, he drew upon every ounce of faith he had left, and they propelled themselves toward the light, hand in hand. But just as they surged forward, a realization hit Sarah. What if the abyss was a deception? What if the light wasn't salvation but a trap? No sooner had they lunged into the blinding brightness than the shadows howled in fury, reaching out, claws scraping the air, desperate to reclaim them. The world spun, the brightness enveloping her, blurring together memories and terrors. Then darkness fell, quiet yet thick, as she felt the pull of reality struggle for her attention. Had they escaped? Or were they merely stepping into a greater nightmare? As silence descended, something unfurled in the void around them, an insidious sense of dread. The last whispers curled through her consciousness, promising that the real horror had just begun. Light burst into stark outlines, casting eerie shadows that twisted along the edges of her vision. Sarah's heart raced as reality tried to piece itself together, but she was met only with an oppressive, suffocating silence. Where was Jacob? Panic gripped her chest like a vice. She turned in frantic circles, the shadows whispering to her, taunting her with every flicker of movement. Jacob, she called, voice trembling, desperate echoes swallowed by the silence. The ground beneath her felt damp and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of the light that had engulfed them moments prior. The air had grown dense, thick with the taste of rust and fear. She blinked against the brightness, straining to see past the blinding glare, but all she saw was an endless expanse of white. It felt like a trap, like stepping into an old, dusty photograph where nothing breathed, nothing lived. Mommy. The voice came from behind her, fragile and scared. Relief flooded Sarah's veins like a surge of adrenaline. She spun around, ready to embrace her son, but the sight before her froze her in place. Standing there was Jacob, his small figure muddied and bruised, trembling like a leaf poised to fall. Mommy, I didn't want to leave you, he whimpered, shivering in the chilling atmosphere. He looked smaller, as if part of him had been shorn off in the maw of the abyss, lost forever in shadow. Jacob, Sarah rushed forward, but something heavy caught her feet, dragging her back. She stumbled, snapping her gaze downward to see thick, dark tendrils snaking around her legs, pooling like oil, trying to pull her under. No, let me go, she struggled, panic flaring. The tendrils tightened their grip, swirling with a chilling sentience. She could feel the pulse of darkness radiating through them, thrumming with a menacing rhythm. It was awakening, and it wanted them both. Mommy, please. Jacob's voice broke through her reverie, his gaze alone wrenching at her heart. I don't want to go back. They're waiting for me. A shiver of dread slithered up her spine. Who was waiting for him? Panic turned to dread, and dread into realization, those familiar, tormented faces from before, hovering just within the periphery. Darkness danced across their features, each one wearing a mask of despair, beckoning her beloved child to join them. Stay away from him, she screamed, anger fueling her fight. With a shaking hand, she reached for Jacob, trying to pull him to her. But the shadows yanked harder, dragging her into their depths again. Mommy! The panic surged in his voice, mingling with the howls that rolled through the air like thunder. I'm scared. The wind began to howl, whipping around them like a snare. The stark white glow bled out, replaced by a swirling mass of pulsating black and red, shifting alive. A heart-stopping moment of clarity struck Sarah. Jacob, listen to me, she yelled, voice steady. We are more than this. You have to close your eyes and remember the light. Remember the park, your bike. Focus on the love we have. For a heartbeat, the chaos paused. Shadows hesitated, wavered, like flocks of crows before seizing upon the wind, but only for a breath. Jacob's eyes brightened against the encroaching darkness. I remember, he whispered, his small hands trembling as he formed some imaginary bike between them. But just as she felt hope stir, the chorus of lost souls erupted, the darkness recoiling violently. You cannot go back. He belongs to us now. They shrieked, claws extending, reaching for her. Desperation ignited in Sarah. She surged forward, reaching out to Jacob, but her energy faltered as the grip of the shadows tightened. No, no, please. Suddenly, everything flickered a blinding flash, and then darkness claimed her once more. The world fragmented, pulled apart like a puzzle tossed to the floor. The echoes of Jacob's voice faded as she spiraled into the black abyss, each heartbeat pounding with finality. Was she losing him? Was it over? As the crushing void enveloped her, the last violent whisper taunted her, echoing through the silence, what if the love you fought for is the very thing that binds you? What awaited Sarah in this new darkness? And would she find her son again? Sarah's senses returned with a jolt, but all that surrounded her was a suffocating emptiness. The black abyss had consumed her, swirling like a living entity, pulsating with malevolence. Her heart thundered painfully in her chest as she clawed at the void, the cold air clawing at her skin. Despair filled her throat like bile. Jacob, she screamed, but her voice bounced back, a mocking echo that froze her core. There was no answer. The dread of silence squeezed her heart tighter than the tendrils had done. But then, just as she began to lose hope, she caught a flicker of light through the darkness. It was faint, like a distant star in a night sky, but it was something. Jacob. She pushed through the darkness, yearning for that spark. The ground felt odd beneath her feet, spongy yet solid, as if she was walking on a living, breathing creature. As she moved closer to the light, whispers brushed against her ears like ghostly fingers, murmuring unintelligible words that sent shivers down her spine. The light flickered, growing stronger, illuminating a strange scene in front of her. Shadows danced along the walls of what appeared to be a long corridor. The walls were lined with photographs, each more disturbing than the last, faces twisted in fear, mouths agape in silent screams, eyes wide, pleading. Her pulse quickened as she recognized someone, a woman from the neighborhood. Sarah had seen her during brief encounters at the grocery store. The woman's eyes seemed to follow her, filled with a haunting blend of sorrow and warning. Clenching her fists, Sarah pressed on, heart racing as the whispers grew louder, echoing around her, pulling at her sanity. Mommy, don't leave me. Jacob's voice called again, sharper now, slicing through the cacophony. He was nearby, yet the distance felt endless. Hold on, Jacob. I'm coming. But as she ran, the corridor twisted and warped, the walls shifting like swirling smoke. Every step felt like running in place, the light dimming farther away. Panic rose again, threatening to swallow her whole. She had to get to him. She had to. The corridor snapped shut, darkness swallowing what little light had remained. Sarah stumbled to the ground, breath choking as the walls closed in. The shadows coiled around her like vipers, tightening their grip. They whispered now, taunting her with her deepest fears. Can you save him? You're the reason he came here. Rage ignited within her. I want to let you take him. He is not yours. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the corridor, twisting the shadows like a storm. The voices grew frantic, as if being torn apart by an unseen force. In that chaos, Sarah stood, her heart pounding, her soul ignited with a fierce determination. Jacob, she cried once more, a battle cry against the dark. Just as the shadows recoiled, a bright surge enveloped her, and she was no longer in the corridor. She found herself back in the void, disoriented and confused, but the ground was solid now, smooth. A single glowing orb floated before her. It pulsed with an inviting warmth as she reached for it. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, memories exploded within her mind: laughter, warm hugs, sun-drenched afternoons in the park. It was a connection, the essence of her love for Jacob. But the ground began to tremble violently, cracks splitting the world around her. No, she screamed. The orb flickered and dimmed. Mommy, help. Jacob's voice pierced through the cracking ground, echoing desperately. The orb began to pull her close, threatening to consume her whole, just as the shadows lunged from below, hungry and howling. Torn between hope and despair, Sarah faced the encroaching darkness. Did she have the strength to fight? Would love conquer the shadows that seeks to tear them apart? As the abyss caved in around her, she lunged for the orb, determined to bring it with her into the dark. Would she grasp the love that could save them, or would the shadows claim them both at last? What if this time, love was not enough? The bright orb pulsed in Sarah's hands, growing warmer, more familiar. As she gripped it, memories flooded her mind. Jacob's laughter at the park, the feel of his tiny hand wrapped around hers, the moments they had shared that built their bond. "I won't let you take him," she cried out, heart racing, knowing she had to stand her ground against the malevolent shadows clawing at the edges of her resolve. With renewed determination, Sarah thrust the orb toward the gaping maw of darkness. The shadows recoiled as the light surged forward, pushing them back, twisting and writhing like serpents in the face of a rising sun. She felt the warmth wash over her, illuminating the edges of despair, forcing a path clear, inch by inch. "Jacob," she shouted, using the power of her love to summon him back to her. The shadows screamed, their voices ragged. "He belongs here." But Sarah's own voice rang out louder, infused with maternal strength. "No, he is my son, and I will fight for him until the end." Just as the darkness threatened to swirl around her, she took a step forward, stepping into the growing light that now surrounded her. "We're together, Jacob." Remember, her heart pounded as she pulled on every good memory, every precious moment that represented their life together. "We have so much yet to experience." Then, amidst a wall of cluttered shadows, she heard Jacob's voice growing clearer, desperate but holding on to the spark of hope. "Mommy, I'm scared. I'm here," she screamed, rushing towards the source of the sound. Every whisper that crawled against her skin felt like ice, but she refused to falter. She felt the tendrils of the shadows grip her ankles, but she pushed through the walls of fear. The orb pulsed with urgency, matching the tempo of her heart. An opening appeared before her, radiant with light, casting aside the lingering whispers of despair. In a flash, she glimpsed Jacob standing there, small, confused, but still fighting against the draw of darkness, tears streaking his dirt-smeared face. "Mommy," he cried again, arms stretching, reaching for her. "Hold on. I'm coming." Time moved like molasses as she ran, the shadows shrieking in furious agony, grasping at her with icy fingers. With her heart on fire and the orb glowing bright, she propelled herself forward, crashing against the walls of fear. The walls began to crack, revealing bits of light, illuminating fragmented memories of joy. "Mommy, I want to go home." Jacob's voice echoed again, full of innocence and longing. The vision of their life together fading like smoke fueled her stride. He was closest now. Heart racing, she breached the threshold, the orb in her palm exploding, illuminating the corridor in glorious light. "No, you can't take him." The neighbors' voices hissed from the shadows, now frayed and desperate. They surged out of the darkness, clawing for her and Jacob, but the orb pushed them back, a protective barrier fueled by love and resolve. "Stay away from my son." With instinctual rage, Sarah charged forward, embracing Jacob as her fingers intertwined with his. The warmth of the orb surged through them both, pushing against the darkness that clung to them like a second skin. She felt Jacob's tiny frame steadier against hers, the pure essence of love beating fiercely in her heart. "Together, we can break free," she urged, powering through the whispers of doubt that hung in the air, tears streaming in defiance. A final surge of brilliance erupted from the orb, sending waves of light, cascading through the shadows and shattering them into sparkling remnants that dissolved into nothingness. The cacophony of screams filled the air as the darkness retreated. The oppressive atmosphere lightened, lifting from Sarah's shoulders, and she felt a sweeping breath of relief wash over her. She had done it. "Mommy," Jacob shouted, his eyes glimmering with uncertainty that slowly faded to joy as the light enveloped them like a warm embrace. They stepped into the light, hearts pounding, and all at once, the overwhelming dread fell behind them. Sarah felt the ground bloom beneath her feet. Green grass, the sun shining brightly, just like home. They had made it back. Together, hand in hand, they turned back to face the remnants of the darkness with hearts blazing, knowing they had faced unfathomable horror, yet emerged alive. The shadows that had whispered, clawed, and tempted could never take root in their bond. Every bit of love they had fought for sparkled around them like fatherly armor. Mommy Jacob looked up, a wide smile breaking across his face, innocence sparking anew. "We'll never let that happen again," Sarah vowed, pulling him close, feeling the pulse of bravery in her heart as they faced the horizon. Hand in hand, Sarah felt the creeping calm settle in, defining a new beginning. They would rebuild, cherish their memories, and ward off any shadows that dared seek them out again. This time, she'd be ready to protect, ready to fight. That a little while later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah sat with Jacob, slowly letting herself breathe. It was just the two of them now, and she understood no matter how dark the path, they would always find the light. Don't let this story end here. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button, feed the algorithm for more spine-tingling tales. Flood the comments with your reactions. Did you see it coming? What are your theories? And for heaven's sake, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't leave them stranded without knowing the power of love against darkness. Only true fans understand the urgency.